There is darkness over this ancient land. To the Aboriginal people, it is the dream time. It is the beginning of man. The quietness of the desert night is broken by the sound of the corroboree and the howl of the dingoes. The rising sun gradually casts its rays over this lonely land of far horizons. Grasses grow, or the plains are blackened and burnt and bare, where the false mirages go like shifting symbols of hope deferred. Land where you never know. A land of plenty or land of want, where the grey companions dance, feast or famine, or hope or fear, and in all things, land of chance, where nature pampers or nature slays in her ruthless red romance. Adelaide, the setting for the 5th Australian venture. Over 2,000 venturers and ranger guides attended from all parts of Australia and from nearby countries. 10 days of on-site and off-site activities. 10 days of open-air life spent in heatwave conditions of a South Australian summer that tested the endurance of all who attended. Site at the conclusion of the venture on Monday afternoon, the 8th of January 1979. 15 venturers from 1st Narwee, 2 from 2nd Beverly Hills and 1 from 1st Kingsway accompanied venture leader Bob Potter on their journey northwards into this timeless land.
To carry me west, me homeward boy, with a cattle laid astray on the far Barcoo where they Nardu 1,000 miles away. So give me your horses rein across the open plain. We'll shift our meat both sound and sweet, don't care what some folks say. And those we'll send home their cattle that now roam on the far Barcoo and the Flinders too 1,000 miles away. Knee-deep in grass we'll pass, and the truth I'm bound to tell. There in 3 weeks those cattle get as fat as they can swell. As fat as they can swell, me boys, and 1,000 pound they weigh. On the far Barcoo where they eat Nardu 1,000 miles away. So keep your horses rein across the open plain. We'll shift our meat both sound and sweet, don't care what some folks say. And frozen we'll send home the cattle that now roam on the far Barcoo and the Flinders to 1,000 miles away. No Yankee hider grew outside such people and trees. No Yankee pastures grow such beef as we send overseas. As we send overseas, my boys, and 1,000 pound they weigh. On the far Barcoo where they eat Nardu 1,000 miles away. So with your horses rein across the open plain, we'll shift our meat both sound and sweet, don't care what some folks say. And frozen we'll send home the cattle that now roam on the far Barcoo and the Flinders to 1,000 miles away. So keep your horses rein across the open plain, and shift our feet both sound and sweet, don't care what some folks say. And frozen we'll send home the cattle that now roam on the far Barcoo and the Flinders to 1,000 miles away.
From civilization is Cuba Pedy, a tiny isolated settlement existing in the heat and the dust, where fortunes have been made in the mining of opals. The holes in the dry earth have produced more than half the world's supply of those magnificent gems that were formed in the clay stone over 30 million years ago. Nearly half the population of 4,000 people live underground to escape the searing heat of the summer months. Thus, the name of the town, from the Aboriginal dialect, white man in a hole. Soil and the cattle. The centre's wide open spaces have long lured profit-minded cattlemen. The going has never been easy in a region plagued by the 3 Ds, the dry, the disease and the distance from reliable markets. The cattle stations of Central Australia are immense and are measured not in acres but in square miles. Despite its problems, the cattle industry remains the mainstay of the centre's economy and creates jobs where few would otherwise exist. Aboriginal stockmen whose forebears hunted kangaroos in these same wilds now use their tracking ability to run down the strays and to muster the wild, unbranded cattle. Majestic tabletop mountain of Mount Connor, 380 kilometres southwest of Alice Springs, rises above the expanse of the desert. In Aboriginal legends, this imposing mountain is the home of the frightening icemen who create the bad weather. Monument to creation. In Aboriginal minds, Ayers Rock rises above the flat sea-like expanse of the Red Desert. The Pitjantjatjara people cloak this 2.5 mile long monolith in the legends of the Dreamtime. For them, it holds the key to their creation. The rock Uluru, in their ancient language, was their place for ceremonies. The idea that the rock is a sacred place is easy to accept, even without much background knowledge. There is an aura about Uluru that becomes stronger the closer to it that one goes. Climbing to the summit, which thousands do every season, is only a part of the experience. So very easy to believe in that dreaming time. The workaday world of our civilization seems distant and unreal. Stop and listen to the sound of the desert wind. The spirits of the ancient dream time still lingers around this sacred Aboriginal site. Westward from Ayers Rock are the Olgas. 30 weathered sandstone domes rise like giant loaves of bread above the desert floor. The explorer Ernest Giles, who first reached Mount Olga in the year 1873, described it as truly wonderful. It displayed to our astonished eyes rounded minarets and monstrous domes. There they have stood as huge memorials from the ancient times of earth, for countless eons of ages since creation first had its birth. An oasis of civilization in the harsh red heart of Australia. Alice Springs was originally a telegraph station on the overland telegraph line between Adelaide and Darwin. After the comparative comfort of travelling in the bus, the venturers decided to try another form of transport. To the early explorers and pioneers of Central Australia, the camels, these ships of the desert, were the only reliable method of transport. It was decided that the padded seats in the bus were much more comfortable than the back of a camel. Prosperous city, the Alice attracts thousands of tourists annually, especially during the winter months. They travel to the centre to escape the cold of the southern states and to view the spectacular scenery set amid the colourful and rugged McDonnell Ranges. To recapture the scenes made famous by the Aboriginal watercolour painter Albert Namatjira, who depicted them in his paintings. After a busy round of sightseeing, the swimming pool at Alice Springs was a popular attraction for our tourists. Scattered over several kilometres of desert country between Alice Springs and Tennant's Creek are the Devil's Marbles. These weathered granite boulders vary in size from 30 centimetres to over 6 metres across and are stacked in precarious tiers by the master masons of time. The Aborigines believe that they are the eggs of the rainbow serpent, a dream-time being that was linked with the source of life. The dreaming place of the Warramungas and steeped in tribal mythology. A place to lie in the sun and to dream of the past. Hills of all shapes and sizes and inhabited by millions of termites are a feature of this part of northern Australia. They rise like tortured tombstones through the scrubland and along the highways. Mount Isa, an industrial oasis in the outback. The vast mining complex draws lead, zinc, silver and copper from the earth. It is one of the most highly mechanised mining complexes in the world, and it is the largest single industrial enterprise in Queensland. Highway, once a dirt track and now a wide bitumen road, crosses North Queensland and links the Northern Territory with the eastern coast of Queensland. Road trains transport beef cattle from the distant cattle stations to the markets in the other parts of the state. The highway crosses the vast plains of black soil and the Mitchell grass. Near Cloncurry, a monument reminds adventurers of the ill-fated Burke and Wills expedition that passed by here in 1860-1861. What began as a comic opera cavalcade, hoping to be the first to cross Australia, became an epic of endurance and ended in haunting tragedy. Tropical North Queensland and Townsville, the second largest city in that state. During World War II, Townsville was Australia's largest mobilisation base. Today, it is famous for its warm, sunny weather, its deserted sandy beaches, and the Great Barrier Reef. In the harbour of Townsville, fishing and pleasure boats give way to oil tankers, container vessels and bulk carriers. Sugar storage sheds and loading facilities give an indication to the riches of the surrounding areas. Since its discovery on the 6th of June 1770, the rocky island in Cleveland Bay, 5 miles north of Townsville, has enjoyed many distinctive and descriptive titles. Captain Cook thought the granite outcrops were playing tricks with his compass, so he called it Magnetic Island. After Cook's visit, the 22 square mile island remained the sole habitat of a handful of coastal Aborigines. 100 years later, the first Europeans settled on the island to become pioneers of what has developed into Townsville's island suburb. Today, Magnetic Island is a combination of island suburbia and a premier tourist attraction. The permanent residents who commute every day to work in Townsville enjoy a lifestyle that is without parallel anywhere along the Queensland coast. The visitor to Magnetic, whether on a day trip or a holiday, can take his pick of a wide selection of activities or just relax and unwind in this tourist playground. Townsville, we follow the Bruce Highway southward and homewards bound on the final stages of the journey. It is the beginning of the wet season, and monsoonal rains are drenching the Queensland coast. The Whitsunday Passage near Mackay, one of the major holiday attractions in Queensland. From here, visitors can explore the wonders of the Great Barrier Reef and the hundreds of islands that are highlights of this picturesque wonderland. The abundant rain and the lush tropical vegetation is in complete contrast to the dry red centre of Australia that we have travelled through during the early stages of our journey. In the centre, there was a danger of being bogged in the sand. Now we are faced with delays due to floodwaters from the torrential rains. There is always one way to fill in the time whilst awaiting for the floodwaters to recede. Near Mackay, the local Lions Club have displayed a Taiwanese fishing boat confiscated by the government after being apprehended for illegal fishing in the Great Barrier Reef waters. The immense power station at Gladstone is a major centre for the production of electric power in Queensland. complex supplies more than a third of the state's electrical requirements. The southern coast of Queensland and the centre where tropical fruits are grown in profusion for the local markets and for shipment to the other states down south. Soon we are approaching Journey's End. We cross the border into New South Wales, to Byron Bay and to Cape Byron, the most easterly part of Australia. Years ago, the Australian poetess Dorothea McKellar wrote of a sunburnt country. She wrote of a land of sweeping plains, of rugged mountains, of droughts, its flooding rains and its far horizons. During the past weeks, after travelling over 9,000 kilometres, the venturers have relived the scenes written about in this famous poem. They return home with a greater understanding of this great country of ours, this land of contrasts and fantastic extremes, this land of far horizons, this timeless land.